Good morning, class. Mr. Love here. Today we're going to be talking about Oxy Acetylene torches. The first thing we're going to want to do is clean our area up. Make sure there's no flammable substances such as aerosols, brake cleaners, paints. We don't want rags, especially dirty, oily ones. We don't want any paper around. We want to check our full surroundings. We want to make sure there's no trip hazards in case we have a fire or anything and we want to get out, like this broom here. We'll put this back where it goes, or make sure it's at least out of your way. Everything else, at least move 25 feet away from you or around the corner. So we would normally throw this stuff out, but if we couldn't, set it around the corner. A few other things we're going to need today. You need a good pair of work boots. Make sure they go up at least a few inches above your ankle. You don't want to get any hot stuff down your ankle. You want to make sure your pants are over top of them. You want to have on a good pair of work pants or jeans. We're going to need some good cutting gloves for later on. Make sure there's no holes in them. Smell them, make sure they're not covered with gasoline, diesel fuel, or anything else flammable. Grease, oils, stuff like that. If you're going to be doing a lot of cutting, you're going to want a little cap on your head. This will absorb some of the sweat and it will keep the hot sparks from landing on your head and burning your hair. We're going to have on our safety glasses at all times, just like always. So these are going to be over our eyes. Then we're going to have this shaded cut-in mask over top of our safety glasses. This is going to be at least a shade 5 lens here. This will keep that blue ultraviolet light from giving us sunburn on our eyes. So we're going to be using a good mask. Also, we're going to want to have good long sleeves on from like a work shirt. Or if you don't have that, we got these Weldon cutting jackets in the bin there. As you can see, you don't want to have on good clothes. You definitely don't want to have on any sweatpants or windbreaker type material that are going to melt to you. You're going to want on a nice pair of cotton or some sort of cotton blend. Could have a little polyester in it, but as long as it's not totally polyester. Okay, so after we have our work area how we want it, we have all our equipment that we're going to need nice and close. Always make sure you know where the fire extinguisher is, the nearest one. This one's right in our work area right here. You can usually see a sign by it. If it's not easily located by fire code, they should always be by the exit door. So if you need to run and grab one real quick, always run to the exit door. There'll be a fire extinguisher there. Okay, first thing we're going to do is make sure that our tanks are nice and secure on here. We don't want to make sure the chain slipped off, and as we're cutting and pulling on the hose, these tanks aren't going to tip over on us. Make sure they're on a nice stable cart or at least against the wall. Again, check your surroundings. Make sure there's nothing flammable nearby. No open containers of gas or oil. So first thing we're going to do, remove the caps off our tanks. So just going to take our safety caps. We'll set them off to the side. We're going to need them later on. Make sure your tank's positioned where you want it. Take off your acetylene cap, set that off to the side. Okay, we're going to pick up our regulator. We're going to inspect it, make sure it's nice and clean on the end. Never put any oil or anything on these. Don't put anything on the threads. We're going to take our tank and we're going to purge it. Stand off to the side. Don't stand in front of it. Don't put your face in front of it. What we're going to do is clean any spider webs or anything that might be in there, any dust out of there so it doesn't get into our regulator. So we're going to purge this for a quick second. Lets all the gas out of it. Blows all the debris out of it if there's any debris in there. So now we're going to take our regulator. This is the oxygen tank. So this is going to be the right hand thread, what you guys are used to. So you're going to just slowly turn that on there. You don't have to, do it super fast. You don't have to be He-Man. Take the proper size wrench, 1 1/8 for this one. Don't use an adjustable wrench or pliers or anything on here. These are some sort of brass alloy, so you want to make sure that you have the proper wrench, otherwise you're going to round out pretty easy. So we're going to position our regulator where we want it, where we can see the gauges, and we're just going to put slight pressure on here, tighten it down. You don't have to be He-Man or anything and reef it down. Okay, next we're going to go over to our acetylene tank. Do the same thing. We're going to inspect our regulator, make sure it's nice and clean. Okay, we're going to purge our acetylene tank. As you can see, this one here, it's a little more gradual. It doesn't have high pressure as the oxygen tank does. Okay, so this one here, this one's going to be left-hand thread, opposite of what you're used to. So to tighten this one, you got to go counterclockwise instead of clockwise. You can tell because they usually put a groove on stuff that's left-hand thread. This has a groove around the nut part right here. So we're going to put this in here. Sometimes you have to work it back and forth to get it lined up right. And we're going to just go counterclockwise. Nice and slow, tighten it down on there. Again, have your gauge positioned where you want it. You're not going to want to have it upside down like that where you can't see your working pressures or anything. You're going to want it up where you can see it. Okay, so again, we're going to snug it down. Okay, so what I like to do next, I like to turn on the acetylene. So this side here, remember, tells us what's inside the tank. This one here is going to be our working pressure. So this tank isn't totally full. It's starting to get down there a little ways, but we have enough for what we're doing today in there. So remember, the acetylene we're going to turn on 1/4 to 1/2. We don't open this one all the way. The reason we do that is because if there's a fire or anything, we're going to run over and shut this one off really quick. So just 1/4 to 1/2 is all we need on that one. So we have that on right now. Just do a little sniff test around the area. If there's any acetylene leak or anything, you'll start to smell it right away. So that's good there. We'll go over to the oxygen side. The oxygen tank, we're going to turn on all the way. Okay, so that's all the way open there. You can see there's about 1800 psi in our tank right here. So that's good. Okay, you can see our working pressure's turned down on both of them. So before we crank those up, we're going to check our torch head here. Make sure that both valves are shut off. Adjusting one up there. Give your hose a nice visual. Make sure there's no burn marks in it that are penetrating it or anything. Okay. So everything looks pretty good. This is a good time to check your tip and stuff too before we have any pressure in there. We'll get to cleaning the tip here in a few minutes, but make sure there's not all boogered up there. Okay, so it looks like we're ready to go here. So now we're going to adjust our working pressures. So our oxygen, we're going to set to around 30 for what we're doing today. You can see the 30 right there on the inside, 30 psi. Okay, the acetylene, we're going to set at about 7. Usually anywhere between 5 and 10 is pretty good for what we're going to do. Sometimes if you have a big rosebud torch on there, you might have to go up to like 12 or 13. As you can see on the gauge here, you don't want to go past 15. Once you go past 15, the isotone that's inside the acetylene tank here doesn't turn to gas fast enough, so you get liquid isotone coming into your torch and you'll start to get popping and stuff. Okay, so we're going to adjust this one slowly. So we're going to set it at about 7 for what we're doing today. Okay, again, do a sniff test. Now we have the gases out in the hose. Listen for stuff. Make sure you don't have any leaks. Okay, everything sounds and looks good. So now we're going to get suited up and ready to do some cutting. Okay, now we're here with a little piece of steel we're going to cut today. So next we want to make sure our vent's on here. Make sure we're getting good draft. There's going to be pretty good smoke here. If you're in an area where there's no vents like this or anything, make sure you have a door or something open so you have nice fresh air coming in at all times. Make sure your torches are far enough away from you where you're not going to be shooting sparks at them, but make sure it's also a close, clear line of sight where you could run over and shut off the acetylene if something fails or you start a fire. Okay, so we're going to put our gloves on. I didn't put the jacket on because I got nice long sleeves here. Before I put my other glove on, I'm going to test the striker real quick. There's a flint inside here. So you're going to put a little downward pressure on here, squeeze it over, and it's going to make a spark. The reason we use this instead of like a Bic lighter or something, for one, you can do it with your gloves on. Two, a cheap little plastic Bic lighter if you have it in your pocket and you're cutting with the torch or something and a hot spark lands on it and melts through the side of it. Now you got a little butane explosion in your pocket. Mess up your leg a little bit. So there's no gas or fuels or anything here. So all it is a little flint for a spark. So very simple, very effective. That's all we need for this. Okay. So make sure you put your mask on. Okay, now we're all suited up with our gloves. You want to make sure it's a high cuff glove. Make sure you don't have any skin exposed on your arms. Make sure it's not big and floppy here. Some welding cuffs and stuff have little elastic here so it keeps tight on your arm so you don't get any hot stuff down there. But just, try your best to make sure that there's no big gaps there or anything where stuff's going to go down your sleeve. You could even put your sleeves over top if you wanted to, but you don't want to get a hot piece down in there. You can't get it off fast enough. You also want to make sure your gloves are loose enough on your hands where if you had to, you could flop it off real quick if you get a hot one down inside there. We're not doing precision stuff with our hands, so a little loose glove here won't hurt anything. Okay, we got our glove back on here. Okay, so now for this style torch, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the oxygen on all the way down here. Turn the oxygen on all the way down here. This will give us enough flow for when we need it to blow out the metal. Okay, so next I'm going to turn on my acetylene just a little bit. Take my striker, squeeze it at the tip. A little more with the acetylene. Okay, you see we got a nice flame going there. You kind of do this part by sight and sound. So if I just have a little bit right now, you'll see all the black cinders coming off of it. The more I turn it up, the louder it gets. The more pure it gets. If I go too far with it, you'll see it start to blow away right there. We don't want that either. So we want to get it connected, but we also want a little burn to it. So we have our oxygen on all the way down here. Now we're going to adjust our oxygen up here. So if it starts to blow away like that, just turn down your acetylene a little bit. Give it a little oxygen. Okay, you can see the cone of the oxygen starting to get more pure. You'll see that long cone starting to suck back. The more we turn it back, better it gets. So right when that cone meets the other cone, that's where we want to be. If we go too far with it, you can hear it start to throttle up there and get pretty loud. That's not where we want it. We want it right where that cone feather meets the other cone. Right there. Okay, now we do a quick little test with our squeeze handle here. We want it nice and clean. If the center hole of that's plugged right now, you won't get a nice clean blowout like that. You won't be able to cut the metal. Okay, so remember, make sure we're not blowing near the tanks or anything else flammable. So now, whenever possible, you want to keep your arms as close to your body as you can. Try to keep your elbows at a 90-degree angle. This torch head's a little heavy and awkward, so it's a little weird if you're hanging it out, holding out like this for a long period of time. So we're going to keep our arms nice and close to our body. Have one hand holding the torch down here by the spark arresters. Have your other hand here with your thumb ready to go on the trigger. So what we're going to do, we're going to just slowly heat up the metal here. You'll see it start to turn red hot like that. So when that turns red hot, that's when we're going to squeeze this trigger right here. And that molten metal is just going to be blown out of the way by the extra oxygen. So we want to stay about a 1/4 inch away. If we get too close, it's going to mess up our tip. If we're too far away, that's not where the heat is. Most of the heat's right here where this nice bright blue flame is right here. Okay, so we want to be about a 1/4 inch away, right where that bright blue flame is. You see it gets red hot pretty much instantly. So we're going to squeeze the trigger. We're going to start to cut. This is where you want to be nice and steady as you can. If you go too fast, it's not going to cut. See? If you go too slow, it's just going to blow metal out behind you there. So you want to do a nice steady pace. Sometimes if it starts to fill in behind you, just back up a little bit. It won't hurt anything. Sometimes you got to go over it a couple times, especially with this thinner alloy metal. Get all your little spots that you missed. Then it should drop out of your way there. That's why you want to have on nice boots and stuff. You saw all the sparks flying down there. If you had sneakers or something on, they'd be melting to your shoes right now. So that's all there is to it. So if we wanted to burn a hole in a piece of metal, we'd get to where we wanted the hole. Same idea, stay about 1/4 inch away. Once you see that area start to get red hot, do a little testing. Should be able to blow a hole in it right away. So we blow a hole in it, then just make a small circular motion. Kind of move your hips, not your arms. That way I'll give you a nice circle. Okay, now we're shutting it down. What we always want to do, we always want to get rid of the flammable part first. So we're going to shut off the acetylene. We'll shut off our oxygen valve up here so it doesn't mess us up later. Then we'll fully shut off our oxygen valve down here. Make sure everything's off. If you're going to set down your torches, make sure you don't set it on anything flammable. Just set it on the bench that you're working on. Okay, now we can de-suit. Okay, now we're ready to shut down our system over here. So we'll bring our torch head over with us here. So what we're going to do first, we're going to shut off our acetylene. So that's our flammable gas. We always want to turn this on last and shut it off first. Okay, so we're going to come over and we're going to shut off our acetylene here. You can see we still have pressure in the regulator and in the tank here until we relieve the pressure out. So before we back off the regulator, just open up your acetylene hose here. And just bleed out the regulator here. Okay, we're going to shut that back off. Now we can back off the regulator. Okay, now we'll do the same with the oxygen. Shut the tank off. Turn on our oxygen here a little bit. So no oxygen is going to come out here unless we squeeze this trigger. You can see it drains out pretty quickly. Okay, so now shut off your valve again for next time. Okay, now just set this off to the side till it cools down. Okay, now we can back off this regulator. Now we're going to take it off. Okay, so remember this one's regular thread, so we go counterclockwise. All you got to do is break it loose and then you can do the rest by hand. Okay, so now we're just going to take our regulator and set it someplace safe where it's not going to get damaged. As soon as you have that regulator out of there, put the cap back on. Makes the tank a lot safer in case it falls over or anything. Okay, so next the acetylene. Remember this one's left-hand thread, so we're going to turn it clockwise to loosen it. Same thing with this one. All you got to do is break it loose and then you can take it off by hand. Okay, so we had that off. We're going to set it someplace safe here. And we're going to put the cap on. And after the torch head and everything cools down, then we'll wind everything up on here, make it look nice and neat. Always make sure the torch head is cooled down before you wind it up. If this was hot right now and you touched to this, it could melt the hose. So if it is hot, just face it off to the side like that. Okay, now we're going to clean the tip here. You don't have to do this every time, only when you get splatter and stuff up in there. So what I like to do first, I like to just take a wire brush. Just give it a quick little brush off there. Get any of the big debris off that'll hurt you from getting it through the hole there. Doesn't have to be super shiny at this point. Okay, so now we're going to take the proper size wrench. In this case, it's a 1-inch wrench. Gonna put it on there, crack it loose. As soon as it's cracked loose, you should be able to take it off by hand. Okay, we're going to pull it out and inspect it. You can see there's a lot of debris on there holding this in there. Sometimes you got to beat it on the table a little bit to get it to pop out of there, especially when there's that much debris. Okay, inspect everything. Make sure you don't see any problems with the tip or anything. You're going to give it a little wire brushing off. Clean a little more of the debris off. Make sure the end's nice and cleaned off. You're going to have to be cleaning out these little holes here in a minute, so you don't want any stuff to obstruct you. At this point, you might as well clean the retaining cap up. Just get some of the debris off of there. Looks good. Okay, have a nice clean rag. Just wipe everything off there. It doesn't have to be shiny new or anything. Okay, now we're going to take our tip cleaners here. You open it up. You fan them all out here to the different sizes. Then you take your tip and see which one best fits down inside there. You want it to be a little snug but not too tight where you're going to bend it. So you can see the tip's a little tapered there, then it goes down to a little rougher edge. So you get it so it fits in the hole. Then when you get down to the rougher edge, it cleans it out nicely inside there. So you just work around, get all the little holes. Okay, so we've got all the small holes clean. Now we're going to get a little bigger one here for the center hole. That's where the oxygen comes out when we pull that big trigger. Okay, so this one's a little deeper hole. We're going to get right down in there. Get it all cleaned up nice. You pull it out. Then there's also, if you have a lot of debris on the tip before you start, there's also like a little file in here, just to clean it up just a little bit. So our tip's nice and clean now. So now we could reinstall it. So we're just going to put it back in here, slide it down in there, take the retaining nut. If the torch is cool, hang on to it right up here. You don't want to hang on to it down here because it'll bend your piping. Hang on to it up here and just snug that down. Doesn't have to be super tight. You don't have to be He-Man or anything. Just a nice snug fit right there. And that's all there is to cleaning the tip. Okay, now we're going to change out into a brazing tip from the cut-in tip. So we're going to take our proper wrench again, 1 inch for this one. We're going to break this retaining nut loose right here. So once that's screwed out, then you can just pull that out here. Check the O-rings when you pull it out. There should be 3 O-rings on there. We'll set that off to the side someplace nice and clean. Okay, so here's our brazen tip. So make sure it's clean of debris or anything. Remember, no oil or anything on this also. Just going to stick that down in there, then we're going to tighten this retaining nut. So you're going to want to set it to where you want your controls on it. I like my controls so I can operate them with my right hand usually. So I usually keep them on facing the right side. Okay, now we're going to snug it down here. Find the right size here for it. This one's a 7/8. Okay, so now we have that on there. We set up our torches just like we would with our cutting head on there. Turn on our acetylene 1/4 to 1/2 a turn. Set it at 5 to 7. Turn on our oxygen all the way. The oxygen you can set a little lower now if you wanted to. Probably around 20 will be plenty for this. We don't need that extra oxygen to push the pooled metal out of the way. We just need it to make us a nice blue flame. Okay, we have on all our safety gear that we had before. Now we can light this up. Okay, so again we turn on the acetylene just a little bit. A little bit more. Okay, we strike it. You can see it's blown away there quite a bit, so we're going to turn it down. Okay, now we're ready to add our oxygen. Just slowly turn the oxygen on. You'll see that flame feather come back just like the other one. So once it gets, as soon as it meets the other cone there, that's right where we want it at for what we're doing. So this is going to be for soldering or brazing. You're not going to use this to cut steel or anything. You can use it to heat up something. If you need to heat up a little fitting or something to get it out, you can use this. Just gives you a nice little precise flame. Okay, so when we're done with it, we're going to just shut off the acetylene and shut off the oxygen. Okay. And after it's cooled down, we'll switch it back to our cutting head. We'll take our 7/8 wrench again, break it loose, pull it out of there, set it off to the side. Take our cutting head, again make sure it's nice and clean, the O-rings are on there. Slide it down in there, and we're going to tighten that down in. Get the head to where you want it, lined up with your controls. Once it's there, snug it down the rest of the way by hand. And take your wrench, 1 inch in this case, and just snug it down nicely. That's all there is to it. Then we just shut off the tanks and everything like we did before and wind up our hose.